But I will say the last 2 times I've won at Lakeside, they haven't really benefited me in any way, which is...
She's the most feared woman in darts, but fear doesn't always come with friends. Behind Beau Greaves' calm stare is a trail of rivals, jealous critics, and players who'd rather see her lose than lift another trophy. And some of them? She's not exactly a fan of either. At just 20 years old, Beau Greaves has already done what most players spend a lifetime chasing. She's crushed records, dominated tournaments, and rewritten what people thought women's darts could be. But success on this level doesn't come quietly. The moment she started winning everything in sight, the whispers began, people calling her too confident, too quiet, or too different. Even fellow players admitted they didn't know what to make of her. She rarely celebrates, doesn't talk much at the board, and when she wins hard. That calm, almost icy composure, it drives some players crazy. They can't tell if she's nervous, arrogant, or just that good. And that's where the tension started. Because when one player keeps taking trophies home, someone else has to lose them, and the first name in that story might surprise you. The spark hit in October 2025. Less than 24 hours after Luke Littler crushed Luke Humphreys to lift the World Grand Prix, he walked into Wigan for the PDC World Youth Championship and ran into Beau Greaves. In a last-leg thriller, Beau edged him 6-5, becoming the first woman ever to reach the World Youth Final. She dragged it back from 4-2 down, sealed it with an 80 checkout, and matched the reigning world champion blow for blow. Littler's average? A blistering 107 plus. Beau still found a way. The win didn't live on hype, it lived on numbers. Reports logged Beau in the 105 range, with the decisive surge in the 11th leg that broke Littler's throw and the internet at the same time. It wasn't an exhibition, it was composure, tight grouping, ruthless doubling, and zero panic with the match on a knife edge. Context made it bigger. Littler had just banked another major and was the sport's unstoppable headline. 24 hours later, Beau flipped the script, not with noise, but with execution. Even the write-ups that spotlighted Littler's 2 10-dart legs had to admit it. The shock belonged to Greaves. The aftermath traveled fast. Official lines confirmed the history and the next step, Greaves versus Gian Van Veen in the World Youth Final at Butlins Minehead on the 23rd of November 2025, slotted between the Players' Championship final sessions. The PDC called it astonishing, broadcasters circled the date, darts fans cleared the calendar. And the tone? Surprisingly respectful. Coverage noted, Littler congratulated Beau publicly, while the wider reaction framed it as a line in the sand moment for the women's no. One proof she can absorb a champion's best game and still close. The conversation shifted from can she hang to who stops her when it matters most. But that wasn't the whole story, because the final wasn't just a showcase. It was a chance to rewrite where Beau plays, who she faces, and how the sport talks about her next. It started with a few nasty comments online, and then spiraled into full-blown rumor territory. After another dominant run at the PDC Women's Series, Beau became the target of bizarre accusations. Some fans and even a few supposed insiders started spreading false claims about her identity, suggesting she wasn't really eligible to compete in the women's tournaments. These weren't just whispers. The comments filled forums, tweets, and Facebook groups, all questioning something that was never in doubt. The accusations were completely baseless, and they said more about the people posting them than about Beau herself. Still, the hate spread fast. While other players congratulated her wins, some kept suspiciously quiet, not wanting to get pulled into the mess. That silence spoke volumes too. In a sport already split between two organizations, the PDC and the WDF, public opinion can turn quickly, and Beau's dominance made her an easy target. For a lot of people, Greaves' calm, no-nonsense personality comes across as intimidating. She doesn't play the PR game. She doesn't feed the press juicy quotes. So when controversy hits, she lets everyone else talk themselves in circles while she keeps throwing darts. The problem is, that approach only fuels speculation. The less she says, the more people fill in the blanks, and the blanks became wild stories that had nothing to do with her talent or her record. Darts News and other outlets eventually had to step in, calling the rumors what they were, disgusting and dehumanizing. Fans rallied behind Beau, defending her, but the episode left its mark. It showed how quickly success in darts, especially as a woman, can turn into a lightning rod for hate. For Beau, that moment was a turning point. The line between healthy rivalry and full-on hostility had been crossed, and she knew it. But instead of stepping back, she doubled down, returning to the board, winning more titles, and letting the results drown out the noise. Yet even that wasn't the end. Because as the rumors died down, a new kind of tension started brewing this time. Not online, but inside the sport itself. And the next group of players she clashed with weren't hiding behind keyboards, they were standing across the oki from her. After conquering nearly everything in the women's game, everyone expected Beau to take the next logical step. The men's tour. Bigger crowds, higher pressure, more prize money. But when the invitation came, Beau did something nobody expected. She said no. Reporters couldn't believe it. The PDC had offered her a spot at the World Championship, the same stage where legends like Phil Taylor and Michael Van Gerwen built their legacies, and she turned it down. Her reason? Simple, but brutally honest. She said she just wasn't keen on playing the lads. That one line sent shockwaves through the darts world. Some fans applauded her honesty. Others twisted it into arrogance, claiming she didn't want to risk losing to men. But Beau clarified it. It wasn't fear, it was focus. She said the men's circuit was a completely different standard, and she didn't enjoy those matches, not because she couldn't compete, but because it didn't feel like her game. To most people, that sounded strange, but to Beau, it made perfect sense. She's never been about proving herself to critics, she's about playing where she feels she belongs. Still, that choice rubbed a few players the wrong way. Some saw it as disrespectful, like she was saying the women's game was easier. Others saw it as an excuse not to test herself. And, while Beau ignored the noise, the chatter didn't stop. A few male players hinted in interviews that she was dodging competition or avoiding pressure. None of them said her name directly, but everyone knew who they meant. For a sport that thrives on rivalries, it was perfect fuel. The idea of a dominant woman refusing to face the men who wanted a piece of her, that was a headline the media couldn't resist. But the truth was simpler. Beau didn't owe anyone an explanation. She was already rewriting history her own way. Yet, just as the debate started to fade, another controversy hit, this time about something even she couldn't control: the rules. In darts, there's a rule that sounds small, but creates massive drama. Players can't compete in both the PDC and the WDF World Championships in the same season. It's meant to stop scheduling conflicts, but in Beau's case, it did something else entirely. It forced her to choose. On one hand, she had the PDC, the global stage, mainstream spotlight, and a chance to compete against the men. On the other, the WDF, the championship, she already ruled, and where her fans expected her to defend the title, most players would have taken the fame route. Beau didn't. She called the rule stupid in an interview, saying it made no sense to punish players for succeeding in both arenas. But despite her frustration, she stayed loyal to the WDF and skipped the PDC event. That decision divided fans and players alike. Some praised her integrity, others mocked her for playing it safe. One thing was clear though, her choice shook up both organizations. Players who missed out on that open PDC spot weren't exactly cheering her on, and behind closed doors, plenty of them felt she'd wasted an opportunity. But Beau's loyalty paid off. She went back to the WDF and defended her title like nothing had happened. She proved her point in the most Beau Greaves way possible. No interviews, no apologies, just wins. Still, that stupid rule, quote, didn't fade quietly. It made headlines, and insiders said it created friction between her and several top names in the sport. Not personal hate, exactly, but professional tension that still lingers today. Because in darts, every rivalry starts with something small: a comment, a decision, a missed handshake. And Beau's journey had all three. But the story doesn't end with official rules or public feuds. The next rivalries were quieter, the kind that don't happen in interviews, but behind the stage, where cameras don't roll and trophies aren't the only thing people compete for. For all the noise about Beau facing male players, some of her toughest moments didn't come from the men's side at all. They came from the women standing just a few feet away. The women's circuit might look friendly on camera, but behind the scenes, it's every bit as competitive, and when one player keeps taking every trophy, it's bound to rub people the wrong way. Beau's dominance hasn't just been impressive, it's been relentless. Long unbeaten streaks, back-to-back titles, averages that made commentators run out of adjectives. Players who once saw her as the next big hope eventually realized they were standing in her shadow. And that's when the whispers started quiet comments about her attitude, her style, or even her confidence. Not open hostility, but that subtle kind of rivalry that lives in locker rooms and social feeds. Some fans compared it to the early tension between Fallon Sherrock and Lisa Ashton, two women who helped pave the way for Beau. But Beau's rise was different, faster, sharper, and less forgiving. She didn't just step into the spotlight, she owned it. And that made her hard to ignore, and even harder to beat. Journalists noticed too. Articles started framing her as the new queen, or better than Fallon, headlines that do more harm than good in a small community. Suddenly, it wasn't Beau against the field, it was Beau versus the idea of everyone else. Still, if that pressure ever got to her, she never showed it. She doesn't trash talk, she doesn't play mind games, she just walks up, throws, and wins. And maybe that's what stings the most for her rivals, she makes it look effortless. Because in a world where some players rely on personality to stay relevant, Beau's personality is her silence. That quiet confidence, that almost emotionless focus can come off as cold, but it's also what keeps her unbeatable. And as the competition closed ranks, one thing became clear. Beau wasn't trying to fit in anymore. She was building her own lane. But that independence would come with a price, because the more she separated herself from the rest, the more people wanted to see her fall. Success has a strange way of turning fans into critics. For Beau Greaves, that transformation happened fast. One year, she was the teenage prodigy breaking records. The next, she was the player everyone loved to question. Every time she skipped a tournament or declined a media spot, people called her arrogant. Every time she smiled less, they said she didn't care. But the truth is simpler, she's just wired differently. Beau isn't chasing attention, she's chasing perfection. In a sport built on rhythm and routine, she's mastered both. That consistency makes her dangerous, but it also makes her misunderstood. Even some of her peers admit they can't tell what she's thinking. She's like a machine, one commentator said, meant as a compliment, but it became a label that stuck. And that's the paradox of Beau Greaves. The better she gets, the less people seem to understand her. Her rivals study her, her fans defend her, her critics invent stories about her, but Beau? She just keeps throwing darts, because deep down, she knows what everyone else is still figuring out. You don't have to be liked to be legendary. Every record she breaks, every final she wins, adds to a silent kind of dominance, the kind that doesn't shout for attention but demands respect. And maybe that's why some players can't stand her. Not because she's loud or cocky, but because she's neither. She doesn't play their game, she plays hers. And in darts, that might be the biggest threat of all. When you look at Beau Greaves' story, it's not just about trophies or titles, it's about the price of being unbeatable. Every dart she throws has turned into a statement, every win into a reason for someone to doubt her. She's faced sexist comments, bizarre rumors, broken rules, and the quiet resentment of rivals who wish she'd just slow down. But she never does. She just keeps showing up, silent and sharp, letting her game do all the talking. Some people call her cold, others say she's misunderstood, but maybe that's the point. Beau Greaves doesn't fit the mold. She's not here to smile for cameras or feed headlines, she's here to win. And if that means a few players hate her along the way, she'll live with that. Because in the end, legends aren't remembered for being liked, they're remembered for changing the game. And Beau Greaves? She's already doing that. So the real question isn't who she hates, it's who's brave enough to face her next. Which of these rivalries surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to see the next story behind another darts player's biggest feud, make sure you hit subscribe. Trust me, the next one gets even messier.